Hi, everyone. And yeah, so we can get started. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. And just to give you an introduction of myself, I'm Swetha Nagasundaram. I'm your host for today, and I'm from the marketing team at Alavi. And also, just to give you a quick introduction of Alavi, it's basically an application that helps digital marketers in e-commerce brands scale their Facebook campaigns profitably while also saving time. And what actually makes Alavi unique is that it uses your Google Analytics data to find these high intent audiences that want to buy from your own brand. So if you're part of a marketing or a digital team, just feel free to check out our website at www.alavi.ai. And without further ado, we'd like to introduce you to Aditya. We're delighted to have you, Aditya, Singh, with us today. And welcome. And we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this topic, creativity and design, what marketing and digital teams need to know. And to the audience, and just to give you a little bit of a background on Aditya, Aditya is the founder of Xperify.io, and he's actually worked in many different roles before becoming an entrepreneur, including software engineering, brand consultancy, filmmaking, and even music. He then founded Art, which is a project that he started when he was just 26 years old instead of pursuing his MBA abroad. And Art very quickly acquired a large community of over 5,000 photographers and more than 20,000 artworks. And then Aditya moved on to creating Xperify, which is a high growth tech-driven company that accelerates digital ecosystems. And currently the brand has almost 250 plus talented minds and has helped over 100 companies in accelerating their growth, including brands like Uber, Dabur, ITC, ICICI, and more. So during this webinar, Aditya will be taking us through his experience on creativity and design and how you can use it to elevate your brand experience. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them on the Zoom chat option, or if you're watching the Facebook Live, you can drop it there. And we'll be taking them during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Over to you, Aditya.
Lovely. Thank you so much for the introduction, Swetha. Needless to say, I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation. This is a topic that I feel is very close to my heart, like creativity, design, and digital marketing. And just to say, I am quite blessed to have, experiences around the three facets as well. So without further ado, I'm just going to share my screen. Just a moment. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Lovely. So just to give you an introduction about Xperify, what is it that we do? At Xperify, our promise is simple. We accelerate digital marketing ecosystems. The way we do that is fourfold. We call it setup, which stands for strategy, experiences, technology, and uplifting performance. I'd like to start by this quote by Bruce Lee, who says that, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear a man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. And I think, over a period of time, we've seen the 10,000 number come across through different thought leaders today. We see Malcolm Gladwell in his book, The Outliers, talk about the importance of doing something for 10,000 hours to gain expertise. And while Swetha was able to kind of give an introduction about me, before the talk, I was just trying to figure out, what are the 10,000 hours I have spent in my life, just for the sake of the audience to understand where I come from. Right, I've spent more than 10,000 hours playing video games, Defense of the Ancients or Dota being one of them. I still play every weekend. I've practiced karate for over 8 years, and I believe that I've spent around 10,000 hours doing that. And I recently earned my black belt in karate like 6 months back. I've spent 10,000 hours playing the guitar. Back in college, me and my guitar pretty much slept together every day. I've produced a lot of videos, probably more than 1,000 videos till today. So definitely spent more than 10,000 hours producing videos and content. And finally, scaling organizations digitally. So Swetha mentioned Art, which was a project that I was able to scale that organization digitally and organically. After that, working with Xperify, we've been able to scale more than 250 brands till today. And I've played a little bit of a part in that journey to kind of scale those brands as well. Now, coming to the topic at hand, what are we talking about? We're talking about the relationship between creativity, design, and digital marketing. Now, before I start, I have a huge disclaimer, and which says that I consider myself as the modern day Robin Hood, which basically means that most of the material I will be sharing today has come from various sources across the world. They include books, they include blogs, content, videos, conversations with some very talented people, and an extremely talented team at Expedify that kind of we interact with each other every day on a day-to-day basis and learn from them at the same time. So this is a view of how the world was in 1995. As you would see that the 20 most valuable Fortune 500 companies at that time, out of them, only a few of them, IBM, Microsoft, Intel, and Motorola, were in the top 20. Now, zooming across to 2022, we see the Apples, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon's, Meta, Tesla, Tencent, NVIDIA kind of making the mark. So today, we see that there is no question that technology has taken over and digital is really, really the way the world is moving ahead, and it's no stopping it. So this is the perspective on how the world has changed dramatically over the last 2 to 3 decades. It is safe to say that digital marketing has merely just arrived. It's been like, what, 2.5 decades, right? And the marketers today are trying to figure out a formula for success. Now, let me share the version of what goes on in traditional marketing teams today. Strategy is made. Once the strategy is made, the creative people or the expressionists start creating communication and creatives that will start resonating with the audience, hopefully, right? These creatives are then passed on to the media people and the ad people who understand how to run those ads effectively, right? The data comes back, and then we have some good analytical minds coming back with some data-driven insights. These insights are then shared largely with the media team, and the media people start optimizing this. While all of this is going on, the creative people are working on another creative. Let's zoom in a little bit more. I see that there is a wall between the creative people and the analytical people in most marketing teams today. The creative guy never gets to understand or know the insights from the data. And this is why we approach the entire creative versus data problem fundamentally wrong, right? It's not just the media guy who would require the data to kind of optimize and get best results. The creative guy is somehow forgotten and is working on KPIs like delivering 2 creatives a day, for an example. The way that teams today are structured, we see the media team sitting together, the analytical team sitting together, the strategy leads sitting together, the creative people sitting together. And that's where the problem lies. These teams are kind of working in silos, right? What we really need today are cross-functional teams. We need representatives from the various functions coming together and as a unit, talking to each other on a daily basis, learning from each other on a daily basis. That seems to be the only solution. I would say that 2022 is probably the hardest year for marketers ever. We came out of a big pandemic. The way we work has changed completely. Consumer behavior has changed dramatically. The D2C wave is on. Facebook is now Meta. There's a lot that's going on today, right? And then we are looking for people who are like good at creators, people who are good at media, people who are a bit of both. Ironically, this particular artwork and the creative talks about how the unicorn marketeer of today should be analytical, good storyteller, so on and so forth, right? I would say highly effective marketers today would be data-driven, creative people who understand a lot more about the complexity of this entire ecosystem. People who understand strategy, data, creativity together and bring a lot of things together at the same time. They have been termed as a unicorn marketeer. They are not mythical creatures. They are out there, but they are rare to find. Coming back to the topic that we're going to talk about, relationship between creativity, design, and digital marketing. So I'm sure we have an evolved audience over here who would know the nitty-gritties of digital marketing. Anyways, such a big topic, we can keep on talking about this for hours and hours and hours. So the information that I'm going to share is kind of a version that I feel of what digital marketing is. I say that digital marketing is a science, the basic tenets of which lie with technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now, once I was stating this to my team, one of my fellow expedifiers objected to that. They said that science is repeatable, it is reproducible. Digital marketing, on the other hand, does weird, unexplainable things all the time, right? I mean, that got me really thinking because the rationale seemed correct. It does do weird, unexplainable things all the time. Like the same ad running within the same audience at the same time of the year, performs differently all the time. Oh, why does that happen? I came to the conclusion that digital marketing is a study in physics. Precisely speaking, digital marketing is thermodynamics. This also explains the unpredictability factor or entropy in thermodynamics. Let me explain. So I call it digital marketing thermodynamics. And towards the bottom right, you would see the real definition of what thermodynamics is. But extrapolating that analogy to digital marketing, I would say that digital marketing is a branch of marketing that studies the movement of connections between different people. Digital marketing also studies the change in behavior and perception of people. A branch of math called analytics or statistics is often used in digital marketing to look at the motion of connections. I propose the very principles of digital marketing were discovered in 1824 by Sadi Carnot, who's termed as the father of thermodynamics. Now, it's very counterintuitive, right? Because at that point in 1824, nobody could even think about, the world that we are living in. So thermodynamics in itself has 4 laws. And the first law of the same extrapolation of that analogy of DMT would be a brand can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can only be transferred from one form to another. Now, I know this is debatable. Happy to take this in the Q&A section, but the rationale over here is, let's say if Aditya starts an organization today or a brand today, the value system, the belief system, the brand of Aditya would seep into the brand that Aditya is making. And as people start coming into the organization, people, employees, founders, co-founders, the brand becomes a sum of all its parts of the people and what we are trying to represent. The second law of DMT states, and this is the law of entropy, which is really, really critical to the argument that was laid on initially, which was it does weird things, unexplainable things all the time, right? So the complexity of data and teams in silos always increases. So that's a given. Let's come to the third law of DMT. As data in the system becomes predictable, we attain nirvana. I'm sorry, that's the wrong image over there. Yeah, we attain nirvana when the data in system becomes predictable. Finally, the zeroth law of DMT is that if creatives and analytics are in equilibrium with each other, then they are also in perfect equilibrium with brand performance. That's what I have to share about digital marketing in general. Now, coming to design. Now, design is the art of solving problems at the end of the day by asking the right questions, figuring out the best possible outcomes, and discovering the most effective path to get there. Then finally executing whatever we've discovered. Design is an iterative process. It's like a loop. We have questions, we have a direction, we keep executing, and then we keep on repeating it. I would even say that design tames creativity. Creativity keeps on challenging design. Welcome to recursion. I cannot not talk about the Wright brothers when we are talking about design. The Wright brothers defined the problem by simply taking on the problem of flight, a very difficult problem at that time and a problem that nobody could solve it at the point when they were trying to solve it. It took them over half a decade, but they used their own data, examples, and experiments and learned from them until they succeeded in order to solve the problem. They tested hundreds of small-scale glider models, hundreds, mind you, hundreds of models in a wind tunnel that they made themselves to find the model that worked the best. manufacturing an engine to put in their flying machine. They took it upon themselves to create their first engine. And as we know, and history knows, they took their first successful flight on December 16th, 1903. So as I mentioned, coming back to the idea that design tames creativity, right? So you see, design creates structures. It provides guardrails for brands and businesses to operate in, right? Because creativity, by the very nature of creativity, it tends to go towards chaos as well. And we've seen that breakthroughs happen at the edge of chaos. This is probably the only, I would say, campaign or creative that I'm sharing in the presentation today. And it's for a very pertinent reason. Number one, I believe it's one of the most loved brands across the world today. And it says something in this very concise copy, which talks about believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. And coming back to this particular area, you see where this creative lies. It lies exactly at the edge of chaos. And as Nike rolled out this campaign of Calvin Copenhagen, we saw that the share prices of Nike plummeted down, only to rise up to exceeding highs a couple of weeks later. And this is exactly what happened to Nike, what they said, that they believed in something, even if it meant sacrificing everything. We call this the chaos zone. The chaos zone is essentially the zone between where chaos and order lies. Now, it's kind of a tussle in a battle that's happening. Design is taming creativity, creativity is challenging design. Where that particular intersection lies is where really all of the magic happens. About design, I would say design is synonymous with strategy, specifically in the purview of digital marketing. Now let's come to creative. I would say that creative is the least understood monster out there. Very, very few people understand of how creatives impact the outcomes that we are looking for, how it could be measured in some way or the other. But we also understand that this particular monster has the power to make you or break a brand or break a campaign or make a campaign at the same time. Creativity for definitely provides memorable experiences imprinted forever. Creativity, because of the nature of it, it is an unadulterated expression that can also be troublesome for brands. And that's why the tussle keeps on happening. And to avoid that tussle, fortunately today, brands have guardrails. Some of them might understand what this is. We call it like a brand book or a brand Bible that sets rules for a brand to express itself or to protect them from this guy, the unfavorable monster, right? Creativity is hard to measure. I believe all of us would agree to that. There are guidelines that are set by YouTube, the ABCDs of best practices, by Facebook. But why is it that these platforms never came and told us, hey, you know what, make your creative this way and it'll always work, right? So that's the thing, what we see are best practices over and over and over again. Why is that? Let's dive into it. So I'm quoting this particular study by creativex.com only because of the fact that they have huge data that they've derived these insights from. So these insights are shared from over 1 million ads, over $1 billion in media spends, and more than 1 trillion impressions. And they're talking about the implications for creative effectiveness. Now, coming right to the chase, as per them, the creative quality score of any creative is measured by the number of best practices that are applied while making the creative divided by the total number of best practices that are tracked over a huge data set with mathematics and statistics of what's relevant and what's not. So over the analysis of roughly 1 million ads totaling 1 trillion impressions, they identified 3 statistically significant insights that could save advertisers millions of dollars in media spends, especially if you're working with like really big brands who have like huge media spends to use. The first thing is media efficiency. As the creative quality score increases by 10%, we see a 2% decrease in the CPM. The second part is brand awareness. As the creative quality score increases by 10%, we see a higher ad recall value of 2%. Finally, engagement gains, specifically for video content. With a 10% increase in creative quality, we see that the cost per completed view reduced by 4.8% across Facebook and Instagram, and the same trend was observed across Twitter and YouTube ecosystems, but the metric was around 5.7% decrease. This is how you would see the creative quality score. As you see, it increases, the CPM decreases. Now, similarly, as the creative quality score increases, the ad recall increases. Now, I would say this is big. This is big because if you're working at scale, you would end up saving a lot of money just because your message is getting across to your audiences in the best possible manner. And they recognize the brand that and the message that you're sending across. And then as a marketer, you can move them across and down the funnel, depending on whatever the objectives are. Now, I would also say a lot of these metrics right now are very brand-based metrics, but if you're looking for a metric which is on a very direct response side, impressions, click-through rate, CPC, CPV, conversion rate, so on and so forth, these metrics are also very relevant in that direction. Now, coming back to, let's say if you're going back as a marketer today and you want to uplift your game by 2%, 5%, or start executing something, what would I recommend from my experience or from our experience as an organization, right? The first thing for sure is brand your content, especially for videos. The average view time of a video on Facebook and Meta is around 2 seconds. The average view time for any video across YouTube is around 5 seconds. So we would want to brand our content straight up front within 1 to 5 seconds, just so that we get better bang for a buck. I'm a huge stickler for storytelling. I personally don't appreciate brands doing that sometimes, but if done in an aesthetically good manner, I think over scale, this would give you statistically relevant results. The second part is for brands to understand their creative archetypes. Now, this in itself is like a 50-page presentation, so I'm just going to speed roll through it in interest of time. So there are different kind of content archetypes. You have like different kind of contents. You have the poet, preacher, promoter content. They have different reasons to exist and different meanings across different parts in the funnel, and depending on the audience that you're also catering to. They're meant to generally entertain, inspire, convince, or educate people. There are a lot of different content formats out there. As per SEMrush, these are some of the content formats which are out there, and they are literally too many formats. I would say 90 to 95% of the formats that brands use today are these. Out of which, we are going to talk very quickly about the creative archetypes of static graphics. We have digital illustrations, which are used a lot. We have freehand digital illustrations. We have vectors. We have hero copies. Zomato uses them a lot. We have photographs, which could be raw, which could be retouched, which could be e-commerce productized. They could also be stylized shoots or even photo manipulation. Stock photography is something that's bread and butter for marketers today. Then we have hybrid statics, kind of mixing both the worlds together. We have a lot of visual effects also in statics that could be done over here. You could see that liquid motion. It's not something that's shot with a high-speed camera, but designed by a guy who understands.
Hey, sorry, Aditya, your screen is not visible now. It's stuck.
Oh, it's stuck? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You should have told me. 1 second.
Yeah, it's visible now.
It's visible now? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So just so that, you kind of get the sense of what I was talking about. So in terms of static creatives, we have digital illustrations, which could be freehand, which could be vectors. There are hero copies that Zomato utilizes a lot. We have photographs, which could be raw in nature. They could be retouched. They could be e-commerce productized, stylized shoots, photo manipulations. Stock photos are, as you know, bread and butter for marketers today. We have hybrid statics. We have images. This is exactly where I was. where, an artist or visual artist kind of creates those liquid forms or whatever is required to be able to kind of have an impactful creative. Then we have hybrid statics, which are like photo illustration hybrids. We have branded statics. We have memes, one of my favorite. We have infographics, which kind of explains a lot of content together within one graphic. And this is the kind of, what we say are a list of static creative archetypes that exist today. Then we have video archetypes. So we have like the 2D animation, we have 3D animation, we have infographics, we have whiteboard, hand-drawn animation, we have kinetic typography where text and the copy takes over the video. And then we have, live shoots that everybody would be well versed with. We have mixed media where all these kind of forms gets mixed together to create amazing experiences. And finally, we have parallax videos, which are like creating motion with static photographs. This is an interesting technology. Now, coming back to the presentation, is my screen audible? Is my screen visible right now? I just want to check.
No, it's not.
Okay, 1 second. Yeah, I guess it would be now.
Yes.
Excellent. So now coming back to, understanding your creative archetypes, I was able to share so many different creative archetypes. We cannot as a brand be hero at each and every archetype. We have to recognize one champion archetype for a brand, and that's it, right? Maybe a couple of more, but that's it. We have to be very limited in the kind of creative expressions that we as a brand are doing, and then experiment as much as possible within the realm of the creative archetypes that we've selected for ourselves. The third point as the best practice, platform centricity. You would be surprised to know more than 10% of the media spent in India in last financial year was spent on creatives that were not optimized for the platform. So you have like a 9:16 format running on a platform that requires a 1:1 format. So that's a thing that definitely needs to be catered to as part of the process. Across teams, we need to ensure that the creatives that we are developing are being utilized on the platforms and they are meant for the platforms that we are using them on. The copy. I'm a huge stickler for copy. It's not just the copy, but it's also the conciseness and the relevance of what we are saying in the shortest form possible, in the most impactful form possible. There are some studies that we've done within Expedify, and we've seen that the same creative with a different copy, everything is the same. The creative, the expression is the same, just the copy is different. And we've seen around 5 to 10% lift in brand performance just because of the change in copy. And that, I would say, that's one of the best practice to kind of really think about what are we communicating, and as concisely we can communicate what we are trying to say. And finally, I would say every creative, as a creative myself, I would say there's always an X factor in the creative. There are songs that everybody would sing because they're just, they touch your soul, and then there is music that you would just pass by and you wouldn't care, right? And that goes on for the creatives that we are making for these brands as well as marketers. It's the least understood factor. The only thing I would say that we have to really come from a point of empathy towards the people that we are speaking to, communicate concisely, and be at that edge of chaos and creativity. I understand not every creative can be a Mona Lisa, probably not a good strategy. But at the same time, can we create a couple or 3 or 4 Mona Lisas for a brand or our brands on a monthly, daily, weekly, yearly basis? So that's the idea. Coming back to the topic at hand, we are talking about the relationship between creativity, design, and digital marketing. And my proposition today is that creativity encapsulates design, which encapsulates digital marketing. Now, the very reason for this is as evolved apes, who started living in caves at some point. One of the need of expression was to like make wall paintings or sing or dance or do whatever. So creativity is intrinsic to human nature, and it always would be the biggest driver of emotions for humans. Then design, yes, because creativity in itself without any purpose is just art, right? I could just make a song, make creative for myself, be happy and sleep, right? But if it has a larger purpose, if it is solving a bigger problem, then we kind of start putting it on the purview of design. And finally, digital marketing. It is one channel of marketing, a very important channel of marketing, and design and creativity are really important drivers of digital marketing as well. But I would say anything and everything in digital marketing that we do would fall under the purview of somehow between design and creativity. Now, I've shared a couple of formulas with you over here today, the DMT analogy of digital marketing and the creative quality score index and so on and so forth. But, as marketers, we are always trying to find a holistic formula, a universal formula, which kind of will give us a sense of, what if we could just use this and then everything will be hunky-dory. But, I'm sorry to break the myth and say that there is no formula that exists today. If there was a formula, then we wouldn't be required as an agency. Marketeers and marketing wouldn't be required. We'll just apply the formula and everybody would be successful in that world, right? But there is no formula. What there is a recipe, right? And the recipe is what we call setup. The underlying principles of setup is how strategy, experience, and technology, they unite together, and only within cross-functional teams, when they unite together, that's when brand performance happens. That's my talk today. You can reach out to me at aditya@expedify.io. I'd be happy to share my learnings or some of the content that I shared here today with you. You can also search me by these two keywords, which is Aditya and Expedify, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'll be happy to take any question and answers about what I spoke today, or to kind of learn with you as well today. Ending with the best practice. So we are called Expedify, and we accelerate digital marketing ecosystems. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Aditya. And I hope the audience found something really interesting today. So we can move on to the audience Q&A session, which will be moderated by my colleague, Thamali. Over to you, Thamali.
Thanks, Swetha. So I will be choosing a few from the questions our audience has submitted. And our first question is, in your opinion, what do you think the future of brand design will look like? Any trends that you can think of?
I think the basic core principles of brand design, when we talk of brand design, what are we talking about? We're talking about the way we position a brand, the way the brand looks, right? The way the brand expresses itself, right? The principles of brand, I would say, at the end of the day, what is brand? It's a perception. It's kind of a feeling that people get, or we are trying to give as marketeers a feeling that people will get, right? So the principle and the underlying principles of brand, I would say, would remain the same. What's going to change is the platforms and the way we express it, right? So augmented reality, virtual reality, these are certain things that are coming up, but they are not really in commercial use today. But with the advent of Meta, we know that the world is going in that direction. Marketeers who are going to explore how brands communicate through those channels, I think that's going to be really relevant tomorrow. But specifically speaking, if we say of brand design in future, I think brands that are forward-looking, progressive, and are adopting to technology would definitely have an upper hand tomorrow.
Thanks, Aditya. So moving on to the next question. Are there any tips for e-commerce brands and startups that are planning to focus more on creativity and design? Do you have any advice on where to start off from?
So if you are an e-commerce brand and you are struggling between, getting the right metrics, right, like ROAS, conversion rates, so on and so forth, I would say, the answer is something that I already touched upon when I was talking about it, right? We see that we want to be very creative. We hire good creative people. They make good creatives on a daily basis, right? But how often do they learn back from the analytical team in terms of what's working and what's not working, and coming up with hypothesis in terms of testing copies, testing the creative expression or the creative archetypes we are using, right? So I think a lot of systems are today in place in terms of how media is executed, how analytics is run on top of the performances that we are getting, how optimization happens. But my advice would be, get your creative guy or the creative person to learn more about analytics, about digital marketing in general. Get your analytical guy to kind of talk to the creative person also. The answer is going to be cross-functional teams and the unicorn marketeers I spoke of, who are kind of best of all the worlds. I would even go to an extent of saying that earlier, jacks of all and master of one. This phrase was used in a way where we always put the master of one on a pedestal, but I think the way the world is moving, the people who are jack of all are really required to kind of bridge the gaps between creativity and getting successful KPIs and metrics.
Great. So another question that has been asked is, does your marketing team need to be equally talented in both visual and text aspects? Or does it matter if one outweighs the other?
Yeah, I mean, see, there are pros and cons for both. So, like in an ideal world, we would want, who wouldn't want the marketing teams to kind of be best at both the worlds, right? But we've seen that's the problem that's very, very difficult to have and to solve. I think it really largely comes down to the founding team and the value system of the founding team. Like if the founding team are people who are extremely logically, rationally driven, they would excel a lot at data-driven marketing, and that suits them, and that's perfectly okay. And there's nothing wrong in that, right? At the same time, then you have like the creative bunch of people who make like really those creatives who are at the edge of chaos and creativity, and the world has place for them as well. But the proposition I'm making today is that probably, not just probably, I mean, I'm pretty sure about that even today and in the future, marketeers and marketing teams who are cross-functional, who have like best of both the worlds, would have an unfair advantage over people who are just masters of one.
All right. So the next question is, as we all know, creativity comes in waves, and often when there is persuasion or inspiration present, what motivating factors can bring out the best content or design?
So can you please repeat that question?
Sure.
Yeah.
So creativity comes in waves, and often when there is persuasion or inspiration present, what motivating factors can bring out the best content or design?
Okay. So whoever said that creativity comes in waves, I know this person is a creative person, because that's exactly it happens, right? So just kind of building on that idea a little bit, the way creativity happens is there is this idea that comes, okay? It comes and it's coming to you. And then the moment it's coming to you, you start expressing it, you start writing it, you start playing it on the guitar, or you start drawing it on your Illustrator or Photoshop. And then it's just there. And then like you get a phone call, you get a Slack message here and there. And then it's like, hey, don't leave me. But it just now starts disappearing away, right? So yeah, it does come in waves, and it's very, very difficult to kind of set a process towards it. So for me, my creative process, and some successful creatives I know, their creative process, it kind of lies around a couple of principles. The first one is, and it's kind of a controversial thing, which says that originality doesn't exist today, right? Which is like pretty much everything that you're doing creatively has been done in some form or the other before, right? So I would say that, so originality, I would say definitely debatable, doesn't exist today, but authenticity does exist today, right? So that there is a gap between, what is original and what is truly authentic, right? So one of the processes that I use is to take a lot of inspiration. If I'm trying to write a song of some sort or some theme, I would go to the world and try to listen to other songs. If I'm trying to make a creative that solves some problem, I would now then be open towards seeing, hey, what's been done out there, just so that, like my mind kind of opens up and gets primed towards the kind of creative that I'm making. That's one. Number two, I would say that if you're a creative person, you have to be consistent, right? Consistency is always the key. So it comes back to the 10,000 hour or the 10,000 kick rule that Bruce Lee or Malcolm Gladwell spoke about. You have to be doing that one thing over and over and over again, just so that, once you start getting into the zone of creativity, you're able to hold on to this thought that can dissipate easily. But as you keep on practicing it, you get in the flow of it, you find that zone. So I would say, definitely inspiration and consistency, for me, are personally the drivers of creativity.
Thanks, Aditya. So as our final question for today's session, the viewer asks, do you think creativity is something that can be learned through courses, etc.? Or do you have any tips you can share to improve their creative thinking or strategies?
Right. So I'm not going to debunk courses out there, because see, courses are what? They're kind of amalgamated knowledge of what there is, what people think, some structures, processes, and it also gets people into a kind of routine to pursue that. So yeah, courses do have a piece to play to learn about what creativity entails and to learn about certain creative processes, for sure. Sorry, Thamali, what was the second part of the question?
Do you have any tips you can share to improve their creativity thinking and strategies?
Tips to prove creative thinking and strategies. I would say become an expressionist. We are very scared. We are very scared of expressing ourselves in some form or the other, right? I would just say, just go outside. Just go outside of your comfort zone, right? Express as much as you can to people. Some of them would like it, some of them won't like it, some of them would give you feedback. Absorb what you get back as stimulus once you start expressing. I think that would be one. But the moment you tie that back with strategy, then that entire game of creativity and the struggle and that tussle between design keeps on happening, right? Because design says, don't do that. That's forbidden. But the creative guy would be like, hey, you know what? I love playing with chaos, right? So I think best way, if you are trying to amalgamate creativity with strategy, would be to think about the outcome. What are we trying to do and what do we want to get from it, right? And then as you go on that journey of making that creative, keep on thinking about the outcome. What will happen out of it? What will happen out of it? Keep on asking that question again and again and again. And then, if you have structures, you have designs, you have some guardrails set for yourself, keep on checking that. Does this creative completely go against that, or is it really working at that point of that edge of chaos and creativity and design? So I would say that would be kind of a process that people could use to be able to, number one, express creatively, and number two, express creatively under the rules of design and strategies that we place for ourselves.
All right. So a huge thank you to you, Aditya, and our audience for tuning in today. It has been a very eye-opening and insightful session. So before we wrap up, Aditya, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that the world has kind of already changed. We are all aware it's a VUCA world, and there are a lot of skills to be learned today, right? I would say that if you've spent your 10,000 hours at something, right, keep at it. It's very difficult to forget what you already spent your 10,000 hours at, but probably start spending 1 hour, 10 hours, 100 hours, 1,000 hours towards certain things that you feel will complement the direction that you're in, right? So I'm a huge stickler for learning and action-based learning, right? Executing of what I'm learning. And this is really the call for marketeers today at the end of the day. That mythical unicorn marketeer, each one of us has the ability to be as close to that, that unicorn mythical marketeer, a cross-functional marketeer who knows a little bit of a creativity, who excels at one part of, the entire realm of digital marketing. And for leaders, especially, please don't place your team in silos. Please ensure that your culture has a way where the creative teams can speak to analytical teams. The data guy speaks to the creative guy. The creative people understand data. The data people understand a little bit of creativity, right? So I think that's the world we are moving towards. I'm not saying that, core specialists are not required. The world will always have place for them. But the way that we are moving, I think the gap between how we perceive specialists and people who are jack of all, I think that gap is now decreasing, if not already being eliminated. So those would be my closing words today.
Thanks, Aditya. I think that was a great advice for all of us. So if you have missed any part of this session, you can watch it on demand via our LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter pages. And we hope to see you all at our future webinars, and have a great weekend, guys.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I see a lot of friends and Expedifiers over here today. A huge shout out to Alavi for having these conversations about, how digital marketing and brands can kind of help get scaled using AI. So please go out to Alavi and check them out. Also do come to Expedify, check us out. Do reach out to us in case you want to know about anything or just want to have a conversation as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Aditya. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.